Aubrey, I'm very happy to welcome you here tonight with us. She is a food waste specialist with Environment Great Lakes and Energy, which is called EGLE, providing support and technical assistance for food waste reduction programs across the state. Over the past decade, Aubrey worked in the nonprofit sector with food rescue and food access organizations across the United States. She holds a master's degree focused in food systems and a bachelor's in mathematics, both from the University of North Carolina in Asheville. And Ashley, Aubrey, this is kind of one of my pet projects because, we waste so much food in this country. We throw it away, it goes in landfills, and it would be so simple just to make a new habit. I compost, my partner composts, my son composts, because we all kind of learned how important it is. So I'm very happy to have you here tonight, and hopefully we'll convert a few more people.
Well, thank you, Jane, and thank you, Jerry. Okay, so yeah, I am Aubrey Carlisle. I am the food waste specialist with EGLE, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. This is a new position with the state of Michigan. So the position of food waste specialist is new. We've had a compost specialist who's still on our team, but now we have two folks focusing on organics and food waste reduction, and just really excited to be making more strides in reaching some of our goals for food waste reduction. So we'll get started with just a little bit of an overview of what's happening with food waste in the United States and in Michigan. So food waste is, like you mentioned, Jane, it's a big issue. It's something that is easy and complicated at the same time. So about 30 to 40% of food that is produced is not ever eaten, and ends up getting thrown out. So this is a huge financial cost. It costs the nation about $300 billion annually. An average household of four throws away about $3,000 worth of food a year. And when we're seeing times when grocery prices are higher and grocery budgets are more limited, this is a huge cost savings that families could have by working on preventing food waste in the household. And then about 5% of food or of revenue that would have been from food is lost for businesses. And where there are social impacts as well, we see about 15.4% of Michiganders facing food insecurity. And that means they're not able to get enough food or enough of the right kinds of food, while at the same time, all of this food is going in the trash. And I'll get into a little bit more. We know that not all food can be safely consumed or diverted to human consumption, but that's really the highest priority is if it can get to people, we want it to get to people as much as we can. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in coming slides. And then there's the environmental impacts as well. About 25 to 30% of all landfill waste is food. And then we have a lot of landfill emissions that are caused by food waste as well. And then wasting all of that food, you waste all of the resources that go into producing it as well. So you have your packaging, you have your transportation, you have your labor, all of these things that go into producing food, and all of that is ultimately wasted as well. Um, so food waste reduction is a part of reaching our recycling goals. So the recycling rate for the state of Michigan is to reach 30% by 2029, which we are well on our way to meeting that goal. But a big part of that is food waste and organics reduction. So the goal for food waste reduction overall for the state of Michigan is to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. This is aligned with national and global goals as well. Um, we see a similar goal from the Federal Interagency Collaboration to reduce food loss and waste, which comprises comprises of the USDA, EPA, and FDA. And then the UN Sustainable Development Goal is similar to that, reducing food waste by half by 2030 as well. So what's happening in our landfills? We're going to talk a little bit about that. In a material solid waste composition study that was conducted by the Michigan Sustainable Business Forum, it was found that about 19% of what was in that material solid waste composition was food waste. And then we're seeing other organics as well, like wood, compostable paper, and other things that could also be composted, those other non-food organics, making up a really big portion of what's in our landfills. And when we wonder what kinds of food are going to waste, this is a estimate from ReFed. So ReFed is a national group that works on food waste data and information that is accessible for folks to get a better understanding of what is happening in the world of wasted food. So we see a lot of produce going to waste. Almost half of the food that goes into landfills is produce. And then we see prepared food, dairy, eggs, dry goods, breads and bakery, meats, beverages, and frozen food. So, just to give you a sense of what kinds of food are ending up in our landfills. So food waste in landfills is also a problem. So, oops, I'm so sorry. Just trying to adjust my screen here, and it's moving. Okay. So municipal solid waste landfills are the third largest source of methane emissions from human activities in the United States. We're seeing about 50%, 58% of methane emissions from solid waste landfills are from 58% of that methane emitted from landfills is from food. And then we see about 61% of methane that is generated by landfill food waste is not captured by landfill gas collection systems. So while there are methane gas collection systems in place, and these methane gas collection systems are improving, the technology is improving, the systems are improving, there are new technologies that are capturing gas and capturing it more efficiently once they're installed. The problem is food waste decays really quickly, and that food waste generates that methane and gas going into our atmosphere before those methane gas capture and biogas capture systems are put into place. Many of the landfills will put a layer of residential mixed food waste as well before putting in those methane capture systems. And we'll get to this a little bit more as well, but that residential waste is really heavily food and organics as well. So we're seeing these emissions increasing from food waste. So why is this important? You might say, well, methane, why do I care about methane? So methane accounts for 11% of global emissions and traps heat in our atmosphere more than CO2. And also it has a very rapid rate. So getting rid of methane will have really rapid effects and significant effects on our climate and climate change. So methane and biogas capture systems are not the most efficient solutions for capturing those emissions. There are other methods to capture or avoid that methane being produced. Because landfills are an anaerobic environment, then more methane is being produced. When we landfill food, we're not promoting a circular economy. We want products to end up going back into that circular economy and supporting jobs, supporting our communities, and just having the highest and best use for that material. Food waste diversion increases the life of landfills. It has direct impacts on our land, water, air, and our communities. And there's lots of economic opportunities with diverting food waste. Sustainability and economic viability don't always seem like they go together, but they really can go hand in hand because there are a lot of really great ways to have economic viability with some of these food waste diversion programs. So before we get into the next part of the presentation, I would love to open it up for questions or discussion. I will be getting more into, as you can see here, the EPA wasted food scale. So I'll be talking a little bit more about the different methods of food waste diversion. But if anybody has any questions about just the overview of food waste and why we are addressing this issue at the state, please feel free to chime in now.
Aubrey, I just have one question, and would you
Sure.
please explain what anaerobic means versus?
Yeah. So anaerobic is a no oxygen environment. So when you have food in a landfill, there's not oxygen going through there, and so there's no oxygen to help the materials break down in the same way that they would in an aerobic environment. So when you compost food, when you put food in a compost, you turn it, you move it to get that air and that oxygen in there to help it break down and to help get the micro biomes and all of that going. Yeah. Any other questions at this point?
Folks can unmute themselves when they want to ask a question.
Okay, I'll keep going and feel free to chime in at the end. I'm open to this being a conversation and having Q&A. And if anybody does feel like putting a question in the chat, Jane, if you just want to let me know if a question pops up in the chat also.
I sure will.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the updated EPA wasted food scale. Some of you may be familiar with the scale or the previous version that was like a upside down triangle. This is an updated version to kind of show that some diversion methods can be just as good as the other. So donating and upcycling are prevention is the most preferred of keeping food from going to waste in the first place. Donating or upcycling, so having food that would otherwise be wasted end up going to humans for human consumption. That is the most preferred after prevention. Feeding animals or leaving food unharvested is next in line. Then composting or anaerobic digestion, if the digestate is put to a beneficial use. If you're using an anaerobic digester and the disposal of digestate or biosolids is not put to a beneficial use, or if it's disposed and not put to a beneficial use, then that is less preferred. And if you send product down the drain, landfill, or incinerate, that's obviously the least preferred and should be avoided if possible. So we are hoping to continue to follow these suggestions and work towards getting food in those preferred pathways and the highest and best use of any excess food as much as possible.
So
So we'll
can I
talk
ask,
about,
can
sure,
I ask
yeah.
another question? I don't know if this is the right time to ask it, but I've seen these table or countertop, they call them composters,
Mm-hmm.
advertised, and it won't smell and it'll be this and it'll be that. Well, all they do is burn it. And are you familiar with those? And what do you think of them?
Yeah. Yeah, so I do have a slide on these in a little bit. It's kind of towards, I think, the end, or maybe it's the end of this section. But there are different types. There are different. I can go ahead and just hop to that now, and I'll come back if anybody doesn't mind. So these are pre-processing technologies. There are different kinds. There's grinders, biodigesters, pulpers, dehydrators, anaerobic and vessel units. There's different sizes. There are countertop ones. There are commercial scale ones like the in vessel unit that you see a photo of on the top right here. That one's a very large system. There are a lot of pros and cons. Some of them can be very expensive. Um, they do, like you said, reduce odors. Um, they can reduce the volume and the weight. They can help create a byproduct that's more easily transported and more usable for a composter or anaerobic digester. And there are some that create a soil amendment that can be put directly on the soil. Um, but some of those require other inputs. Um, and they can be quite costly. So there are definitely pros and cons. There are different types, and some of them really just dehydrate the food, and then you end up with a dehydrated food powder, basically. Yeah. So different kinds, they do different things. There's a really great publication by the EPA about pre-processing technologies that really goes into detail about all of these different types. There are so you mentioned the countertop ones. Those are great for at home. There are several different types that are for commercial settings and institutions. A lot of times it's marketed towards schools or hospitals, catering companies, places that have a lot of prepared food that may not be safe for human consumption, that may not have space to be able to hold compost, that may not have a uh, a place to be able to send compost. So there's a lot of research still kind of in the works for these. But they are something that is on the table as far as food waste diversion and something that we're learning more about all the time. Um, so that I would say kind of falls in that um, either compost or anaerobic digestion, or a lot of times some of those technologies like the I believe it's the grinders, they end up sending a lot of the waste down the drain and then it just goes to the water treatment plant. um so it's not really the most preferred, but it I would say it's probably more preferred than going to landfill. But like I said, still a lot of kind of figuring out exactly where those fit in this. Um, so prevention is priority. If food waste can be avoided, that is the most ideal situation. There's a whole campaign from the EPA, the Food Too Good to Waste campaign, which has a lot of great resources and materials that are targeted towards residential food waste reduction and prevention. Um, some suggestions for working towards food waste prevention are public education campaigns, supporting food waste audits, supporting local businesses, engaging community partners, as far as, groups or municipalities that are doing this work, talking to individuals in the community. There are really great tools, especially through this Too Good to Waste campaign on um, food waste reduction at home, some suggestions of how can you freeze product and how can you um, make sure things are good to eat before a certain date. how can you repackage food, saving leftovers, repurposing leftovers. There's lots of different things that one can do in their home to be able to reduce food waste. Food waste donation is the next uh, on the preferred pathways. There is a lot of room for increasing food rescue or food donation. There are food banks, food pantries, soup kitchens, larger food rescue organizations all across the state that are facing significant cuts in food budget or significant cuts to what they were recently able to accept. So, some of the federal cuts for charitable food have impacted some of the food pantries and charitable organizations or emergency food access organizations. And so there's definitely a higher need for food rescue and for excess food to end up going to food banks or food pantries or any food access organizations. There's a great tool online called the Excess Food Opportunities Map. This map is a good way to find out who is in your area, where are the food access points in your area. Um, Usually local Feeding America food banks have those as well. There are 7 Feeding America food banks across the state, and each of them serve a different area or a different part of the state, but all Feeding America food banks do cover all counties in the state. And then there are also several food rescue organizations that can pick up food that is perfectly safe to eat and will be able to distribute it to those nonprofit organizations. And then often food can be donated directly to um, food rescue organizations. So any donor that donates food in good faith that it is safe to eat um, is protected by the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. So there is no liability for donating food, and this covers individuals as well. So if you are donating food from your cab or from your pantry that you're not going to eat, or if you're donating food from your garden that you have in surplus, there's no worry about liability because you'll be protected by that Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. And as long as food is being donated safely, that's really the um, the important part there is to make sure that food is kept at temperature if it's a time and temperature controlled product, that food is safe, that you're not donating bulging cans or moldy produce. If it's something that a good rule of thumb is that if it's something you would not eat yourself for food safety, then maybe don't donate it. But many food pantries will also accept food past the expiration date. And it often depends on the item. So dry goods usually can be consumed long after their expiration date and still be safe. And you have the confusion of best by, sell by, use by dates. And many times those are just referencing quality rather than food safety. So if you're not sure if you can donate something past its date, a good way to check is to call your local food pantry who you would be donating the product to. One, to make sure that they can accept it, and two, to make sure it's within their food safety standards, because it does vary depending on your local food pantry as well.
So Aubrey, are there definitions for best by, sell by, use by?
There are, so I believe on the USDA website, there are definitions specific to what those mean, but really they all kind of boil down to quality rather than food safety. Um, Unless you're talking about baby food or baby products, then those should not be donated after the expiration date. Um, okay. Um, So there are other avenues to divert would-be wasted food for human consumption as well. low cost or wholesale avenue, there's the Michigan Agricultural Surplus System, or MASS, which works with farmers and agricultural producers in the state to be able to divert those excess seconds or excess food from farmers to food bank. So this program is housed under the Food Bank Council of Michigan, and they manage those relationships with the food banks, the Feeding America food banks that receive that food, and that food is distributed from those Feeding America food banks to their agency partners who all across the state who are distributing that food to communities. So that's a way to support those farmers to be able to still sell that product that they might not have been able to sell otherwise, and to be able to still get that food out into the community as well. And then many charitable food organizations do purchase directly as well. So if there are opportunities for excess food to be sold, then that is a potential avenue as well. Or through programs like Too Good To Go, which is an app in Southeast Michigan that many restaurants will use to sell food that they have in excess at a discounted price. Uh, you may have seen flash food fridges as well. That's another opportunity for retailers to be able to mark down close dated or food that they have in excess. And a lot of times you see really great deals on product in those fridges, and many times they are open to SNAP as well, so you can use SNAP benefits to be able to access that lower cost or close dated items through those services. Upcycling is another area in the preferred areas of diverting food waste for human consumption. So that is taking excess food and turning it into a value-added product. There are different ways that this is done. There are organizations or businesses that take close dated or not close dated, but produce that's kind of at the end of its line, and they can it to create a value added product. There are some nonprofit organizations that take that type of produce and dehydrate it and sell it. I'm sorry, they dehydrate it and ship it. They don't sell it. They ship it to organizations overseas facing food insecurity. There are other types of upcycling that are not for, using product to using food excess product to create products that are not for human consumption. So one example is a program that is a Eagle grantee and they also participated in the Next Cycle program, where they use a robot to capture excess food from restaurants. They bring it to an organization that turns that excess food into different types of products that can be used in the restaurant. So they create coasters and utensils and different things and menus, I think, that can be then distributed back to those restaurants that created the food excess. So when we talk about circular economy, that's the kind of thing that we want to see, is that food or that product being used for something and going back out into communities and businesses. Oops. So sorry, I have that in here twice. So beyond human consumption, because we know that most food that is in excess or in surplus cannot be eaten. We know a lot of food is not safe to eat. So our next options are composting and anaerobic digestion. There are a lot of benefits of both of these. So we're seeing food not going into the landfill. We're seeing different types of products that can go into anaerobic digestion or composting, and then kind of what happens to that after it goes through those avenues. So when you have product go to anaerobic digestion, it creates biogas, which can be used for electricity, heat, fuel. and then your digestate that's produced by anaerobic digestion that can be used for fertilizer, animal bedding, or go as a soil amendment directly, or go into a feedstock for compost. And then your compost can be used as a soil amendment as well, and then is also great for erosion control, wetland restoration, drought and flood prevention. A lot of benefits to diverting your organic waste for anaerobic digestion or composting. A little bit more about compost. You know, big thing is it keeps that organic material out of the landfill. Really great for flood and drought resilience. And then can be used in place of chemical fertilizers, increasing that soil quality as well. When you're composting at home or in your backyard, it's a great way to be able to just bring that food right outside and put it in your compost pile and turn it in, and have a really wonderful product to be able to use on your own gardens. Yeah, so composting is definitely an area that the state has provided a lot of support for, and we are seeing a great need to continue to support more compost efforts and to scale these efforts as we work towards meeting that 50% food waste reduction. So as we work more and more towards reducing food waste, we need places for that food waste to go, and compost is a really, really big area that can divert a lot of that food waste that's generated. A little bit more about anaerobic digestion. Food is energy. So we can use that food to create energy. Like I mentioned with methane, from methane capture from landfills, it's a great way to, capture that methane once that system is in place, but it's not the most efficient because we're missing a lot of that methane capture on the front end and after those capture systems are capped. So anaerobic digestion is a much more efficient way to capture that biogas than that methane capture technology. But it is really important when anaerobic digesters are being put into place to have a plan for the digestate. So that's something that can really get tricky with regulatory, with the state and with water resources, and making sure that you are in compliance. So that's maybe why we don't see as many anaerobic digesters across the state as there may be a need for, but they are definitely an important part of the food waste diversion. And again, pre-processing technology, kind of a newer area that is up and coming and has a great use for many types of places that might not have access to other ways to divert food waste. It's not mentioned on here of where these pre-processing technologies are being implemented, but as we discussed before, they can be put into households. They can go in institutions. There are some in like casinos and different places where lots of food is generated that can't be diverted to other avenues. Okay, so before I move on, any other burning questions at this
Aubrey,
moment?
I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you, is there a place that you can get or an app that would recommend one way of processing and a specific company to buy it from?
You mean the pre-processing technologies like these?
Right. Yeah. Since there's so many
Um,
of them.
yeah. So, as a state entity, we can't recommend a specific kind. I don't have a specific list of ones in the state, but there are many. I know there are several in the southeast area that that are coming up. I know the city of Detroit is working on potentially implementing some, I believe, in some multi-family housing units. And yeah, so yeah, I don't have a specific list of vendors for these and pros and cons or a compare of each, but that EPA document is really a helpful tool to find out a little bit more in detail about what types of inputs you can put into these, if there are additives that are needed, what you're getting out of it, um, whether it's more of a pulp or a sludge, or if it's a dehydrated powdered product, or if it's more of a soil amendment. And there's different recipes that you can use for each of these as well to get a different type of product too.
Aubrey, we do have a couple of questions in the chat.
Sure.
One is Marty wonders about the differences in more urban counties versus more rural areas, and who's better or worse at avoiding landfill disposal of food.
I think that's a good point that there are major differences between rural and urban, and there are different approaches to each of those. One thing that's happening in Southeast Michigan, where there's a lot more concentrated population, in the city of Southfield, there is a zero waste plan that was put together by Make Food Not Waste and funded by Eagle. And that program or that project, working with the city of Southfield, was adopted by their city council, and it's a comprehensive plan that addresses eliminating food waste from every source and being able to provide diversion avenues for every source where food excess would be generated. This is also being replicated currently in 5 other cities in Southeast Michigan. We also know that rural areas have a lot different types of food waste generation, and a lot different challenges as far as where can food waste go. You might not have a food pantry that can accept safe to eat food, even if you did have safe to eat food. Or you might have food that can be donated on a Monday, but your food pantry is not open till Thursday, so it can't get to them before it goes bad. So there are different challenges and different opportunities too. So you may have more partners in or more avenues in rural places where you can divert food for animal feed, or more backyard composting opportunities, where in urban areas you might not have as much opportunity for backyard composting. So, this is part of the materials management plan by region or by county, looking at what are the opportunities by county and what are the challenges and where are the gaps. And that's something that the counties are actively working through as the materials management plans are in development.
That's great to hear. Charlie's got his hand raised. Charlie, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Hi, yeah. So my friends in Ontario have 3 trash bins, right? They've got recycling, the everything else bin, and a composting bin. And so when the garbage truck comes, it picks up, well, or 3 garbage trucks, I guess, they pick that up. What are the economic considerations for a municipality? You mentioned Southfield, in dealing with household food waste.
Yeah, household food waste is tricky and it does, vary by municipality. There may be contracts with haulers, there may be, complications with what types of feedstock that your composters are able to accept. There's been some conversation around how do we combine our yard waste and food waste if yard waste is already being picked up. But really it's not impossible, but there are some logistics that have to be worked through as far as how can the composting um, businesses adjust their recipe and their model to be able to accept more than that yard waste or be able to accept them together. And then if you're looking at separating them out and having, okay, you have your trash, your recycling, your yard waste, and your food waste, that's a lot of bins. And that's a lot of trucks going up and down the road to pick up those bins if they're not getting picked up at the same time. And it's a lot for residents to have to work out. It's a lot of focus on education of being able to say, okay, this is what can go in this bin and not cause contamination. And that's a really big concern for your composters as well, is making sure that product doesn't get contaminated. So, you know, I'm talking a lot about like the problems, but that doesn't mean there's not solutions. It just means that the rollout of programs like Southfield are strategic and they take time, and there's a reason for that, because a lot of the changes that have to take place, it all has to happen simultaneously. You have to have your behavior change and your education and your onboarding of your residents, of your communities. You have to have adjustments with your haulers and your municipalities. You have to have adjustments with your composters. So there's a lot of moving pieces, but definitely like things that are kind of moving forward, even community by community.
So Lon had a question a while ago, and don't worry, Lon, I see it and I will get to it. But I'm going to let Lillian, my composting guru, answer her question directly. Go ahead.
Am I unmuted, Jane? I can't tell.
We can hear you now.
Great, great. I have a question for this great presentation, but also just to start, Southeast Oakland County communities are part of the SACRA system, and food waste of certain kinds, the vegetable waste, can be put right out with the yard waste.
Mm-hmm.
It's compost as well. So that's a great option.
Yeah.
My question for Aubrey is what is your method for communicating the issue and options to municipalities? I'm wondering how the education information that you presented, how do you communicate that?
Yeah, so we do work directly with a lot of municipalities. Not obviously not all of them. There's a lot of municipalities. A lot of the information is disseminated through counties. So we are working on sharing a lot of this information out with materials management planning groups and with county representatives, with the anticipation that that will be worked into municipality conversations and education, and working that information kind of from state level into county into municipality. But we do also work directly with municipalities, and we have a program called Catalyst Communities that is focused directly to municipalities, where we hold webinars couple times a month. Usually we just had a food waste series over the summer, where we had one on myths around food loss and waste. We had one on composting and food waste drop-offs, so food scrap drop-offs, and then we had one on school food waste reduction. And I believe we'll have one on upcycling, I believe. It's either upcycling or like agribusiness coming up in either in the fall or in the winter. But we do kind of have food ones pop up on there, and all of those are recorded and on the Eagle Catalyst Communities website. They're all saved on there. So if there's anything that if you'd like to go see what's on there, please feel free. There's lots of really great recorded webinars. But that is another tool that's focused directly towards our municipalities. And then we try to work with municipalities like sharing information through conferences. So we have our Michigan Sustainability Conference coming up in November. We expect a lot of representatives from municipalities to be at that event and have a handful of specifically focused municipality or public-private partnership sessions in that as well as part of that.
So now I have two comments on methane. Lon Herman asks, what is done with the recovered methane? And Marty Hebelisky wanted to point out, thank you very much, Marty. The Sierra Club is a statement on the Sierra Club is in favor of capture of methane at landfills, but is opposed to the burning of methane for fuel.
Mm.
It is not renewable fuel, as you know. Just wanted to make Sierra Club's position on that. But what is done with
Yeah, I think
methane?
it's similar to kind of what's done with the biogas from anaerobic digesters. So it can be used for electricity, heat, fuel, or pipeline gas. I think a lot of times it is used, and I don't know for every landfill what they use it for, but I know there are some that use it specifically for their vehicles and to fuel their vehicles. So that is a use of that biogas.
Okay, Lillian, did you have more?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Nope.
that's okay.
Thank you.
But she did ask also what grant funding might be available to municipalities.
Yeah, so we have different grants available throughout the year. So we have a recycling infrastructure grant that is usually each year that comes out, that's for infrastructure to increase recycling. We have an organics infrastructure grant that's specifically for infrastructure to increase organics diversion. We anticipate to have a food rescue specific grant coming out within the next fiscal year. Hopefully it will go through at some point in the near future, but that is anticipated that we'll have one specifically for that food rescue donation component of food waste diversion. We also have a program called Next Cycle. So Next Cycle is an accelerator that is focused on programs or organizations that are working towards reducing, reusing, and promoting a more circular economy. And many times municipalities participate in that program. City of Ferndale is one that went through a couple years ago to implement some of their food scrap collection programs. Let's see, it was Beaver Island and another city worked together to put in some recycling programs as well. And that's just another opportunity that where city municipalities can participate. We also have seed grants that go out throughout the year. Our Next Cycle has the seed grant program that actually just closed, but that is a like startup program that many municipalities were that had applied for and are eligible for. And then we have other grants like our circular economy grant, our yeah, there's a handful of others that we have directly through Eagle that help businesses, nonprofits, municipalities. Many are open to public organizations, some are open to private. Any other questions right now? Okay, I know I only have 10 minutes, so I'll go through these slides a little quickly to leave room for a few more questions at the end. So if we're looking at where food waste is coming from, we did talk a lot about residential, but you can see here, residential is really the biggest contributor to food waste of where food waste is coming from. You have your farms, manufacturing, food service, retail, and residential as your big contributors there or big areas there where food waste is coming from. So residential really is an area that we are focusing on, especially around that prevention piece. And then looking at municipal garbage that's set out at the curb. You know, we have almost half of what goes into your municipal curbside garbage is compostable product. So that does include food and non-food. But you know, we're seeing almost 21% of just food scraps and residential food waste. There are some really great residential food waste programs that are in place in Michigan that Eagle has supported, and that are really really working on addressing that piece of residential food waste reduction and diversion. So food scrap drop-off sites are one that's really, we've seen a lot coming up. There's an organization called My Green Michigan that's a hauler for a lot of these food scrap programs, but there are many beyond My Green Michigan as well, and many municipalities are putting these in place. If you do go on the My Green Michigan website, you can see a list of the municipalities that they work with. Like I said, those are not the only municipalities in the state that have food scrap drop-off programs, but it's just a list of a handful that are working directly with that within the My Green Michigan service area. Curbside pickup is an area that you know, it has its challenges, but it is up and coming, and there are a handful of programs that Eagle has supported that are working on increasing that curbside food waste pickup. Backyard and community composting, great way to have close to home, very close to home composting opportunities, but it is also limited of where that can happen. And then food waste reduction, education and outreach programs, working really on that prevention piece and that education. This is a lot going on this slide, but we are working with materials management planning committees. We have a food waste reduction template that we are sharing with counties, and then also on this, there's also a template for municipalities and cities as well. So that's a great resource that's available for cities to kind of map out how do we start addressing this issue of food waste from every angle. I was going to share a little bit more about our Eagle funded grant projects, but I'll just quickly mention a couple. You know, I've already talked about our grants that go out, but we really do work to support organizations, municipalities, programs, businesses, folks that are on the ground doing this work to be able to do the work better and to be able to divert more product from the landfill. The partnership between Metro Food Rescue and Sharing Access is one that we have been working with recently. They received some funding from Eagle to be able to open a food processing sorting site near the Detroit Produce Terminal. That site opened or they started working on this project in May. The sorting site opened, I believe, in June, and they've already rescued over 1 million pounds of food in just a few months that was otherwise destined for the landfill. And they've been able to take these 1 million pounds of beautiful produce and distribute it out to communities, not just in Southeast Michigan, but all across the state. Was that it? That was it. Okay. All right. Well, if you do have any other questions, we have a couple more minutes, but I am also open to call, email, text. I didn't put my info at the back here, but I can go back to the beginning. So in case you didn't grab my contact info, feel free to reach out, and I am happy to answer your questions. I'm happy to share this information with county, municipalities, anyone else that is interested in learning more about food waste reduction. I am here to support all of the amazing work that's being done by folks across the state.
Fantastic. One person has a question, whether the federal cuts will affect your ability to provide funding.
Not at the moment. So most of the funding that we have for these grants is through the Renew Michigan Fund. So we don't anticipate that the federal cuts will impact that.
Excellent. Good to hear. All right. Well, thank you, Aubrey. This has really been illuminating and interesting, and I hope if everybody's not out there taking care of their food waste, that they'll start today. It's what's great about it too is it's not, send money or write a letter to your Congress. You can actually do it, and you can do it today.
Yeah.
It's very tangible and immediate. It won't one person doing it won't save the world, but if a lot of us do it, it will.
Yeah, and it really takes everybody. You saw the impact of residential. It adds up. It really adds up what each person does, and the impact that you can make just in your own kitchen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful job, Aubrey. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.